Hey everyone, welcome back to Open. The Alpha Omega Theatrical Dance Company's latest production presents Julia de Burgos, Child of Water, a story about the life of Julia de Burgos, the great Puerto Rican poet born in 1914 who rose from humble beginnings to become one of the premier poets of her time. While struggling with her internal chaos, Child of Water takes a journey through her soul from Puerto Rico to New York, breaking time and space, and takes place in the chasm between life and death. And joining us to share more is Alpha Omega Theatrical Dance Company's artistic director and Child of Water's director, Enrique Cruz de Jesus, and actors Francis Lozada and Rick Reed. Hello and welcome, everyone.
Thank you for having
Hello.
us.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, congratulations, Enrique, on another. I'm going to say this is going to be another unique style presentation because the last time we had you on, we were discussing the Once Upon a Time in El Barrio, which was more of a dance fusion with theatrical production. And I know you do primarily dance presentations. So let's talk about how you chose this particular script written by the great Carmen Rivera Tirado.
How did I get with this production? So they did a reading here with Anton and Rick and Francis, and I fell in love with it. I think about a year later, I decided to call Carmen and to see if I could produce it, direct it in my own space, and that's how it came about.
And so
I don't know if you can hear.
yeah, well, the thing about it is that Alpha Omega Theatrical Productions are known primarily for dance presentations, and Carmen is a very well sought out, well known playwright, and so it seems this time the playwright is the primary topic, right? The actual writing of a script, and then you're going to incorporate this movement to. So it's two different storytelling genres coming together, and I'm really curious to know, I guess, what really pulled you to even working with some of these actors we have at hand, because I know Anton Pagan is working with you again and on this production, and he worked on the previous production, and I'm also familiar with some of the actors we have present with us today who I'm looking forward to chatting with further.
A lot of people don't know that I've done theater for 25 years of my life and that I was on several Broadway national touring shows, including doing the Shakespeare Festival. So that's one of these things that most people don't know about me, that I direct, I'm a singer, I'm an actor, but I come from a strong dance background. So I could tackle just about any project from a point of view of my own creative way, how to convey a story, and basically just go with it. You know, I was not trained as an actor. I was trained as a dancer, and I was not trained as a singer. But I grew up in a musical family. A lot of people don't know that one of my sisters was a very popular singer back in the '70s. Her name was Ketsi Alma, La Lloroncita, they used to call her. And she was one of these child stars that I grew up watching her on TV, you know.
Right. And so, Rick, welcome, Rick. Rick Reed, who I've known for very many years, dating myself. But it is so good to see you, my man. Really, just share your thoughts on I guess the topic of discussion, your even your experience within the theater community, and working with Anton Pagan again.
I have originally was not familiar with, Julia de Burgos or her story, and so when I was introduced to the play, I thought it was a very profound piece of playwriting. I thought that, these are very complex characters. The playwright covers various issues, social issues, political issues, genre issues, even spiritual issues. Um, and so I really kind of like fell in love with the play, and I said to Enrique, I said, this is a play that really needs to be on Broadway, and if she was, um, you know, yeah. I just felt, it's a very powerful piece, and I'm really glad to be working with it, to be working with Enrique. Antone brought me into it, Enrique brought me into it, and so yeah, it's a very profound piece of work.
Wonderful. And Francis, welcome, Francis. This is my first time meeting you. I don't want to assume any role you're playing. Please tell us what role you're playing and how this whole story resonates with you.
Um, I'm playing Julia de Burgos, and I'm very honored to be playing a Puerto Rican icon that I just happened to know about now as an adult, which is, I feel like we should have learned about her when we were young. So I think it's important for us to tell these stories and to just educate our communities, our Puerto Rican communities, about our people that have done stuff in our culture, and not to just let them fade away. So I'm honored that Enrique and Anton and Rick trust me with this role. We have all been collaborating, and it's been a wonderful experience. We've been working so hard, and we hope that when people come, that they can experience what we all have been experiencing throughout these rehearsals.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And so, how many cast members are there altogether?
I think there are about like
Just
7 of us.
7.
There's 7. So, are they all actors, or are they actors, dancers, or is there a combination?
They're all actors, each and every one of them.
And so,
Yeah, I think
And they're
some of
going
us
to dance a little bit.
there's,
and so, aside from us revisiting her history, I understand that the premise is that she has some controversy or some conflict with her own soul in the story that's being told, and so that the soul actually is its own character, and so we're kind of like playing in between. Like I haven't seen it yet, but this is based on everything I've read, almost like a magic realism experience of like coming to historical like context, and then kind of like playing in this realm of fantasy. I mean, this is just me interpreting what I read.
I think that the play is based on for the audience to understand that they're not really watching a person that is living. It's a person that had already passed away, and she is in that purgatory moment in her life where the soul is trying to guide her to what took place and how to transcend to the other side. And it's quite beautiful because Carmen chose some of the poignant parts of her life, and the soul is trying to help her sort of through. Now, through all that, there's like head butting between the soul and Julia, which is the Julia herself,
Right.
and it's almost like reintroducing her to what made her so wonderful and so great about her. Tragic, yes. Uh, Historically, yes. But at the same time, when you write a story like the way Carmen wrote it, it's almost like you're just looking at something that, wow, is this, she actually is not living on stage. She's actually trying to find herself or where to go because of her tragic ending.
So, like, in other words, I know. I mean, one of the things I love about Carmen's writing is that she humanizes each story despite, you know, people's issues, right? That's about the best way for me to present it. From what I know of Julia de Burgos, she drank herself, to her death. And I like yourself, I did my research on her. I mean, this was many years ago. A lot of my friends are poets. I consider myself one by default, being in that environment. And so she's an icon in our community. And the fact that she's being honored in this manner, especially being written by Carmen Rivera. And now, if I can only imagine you bringing in this dynamic of movement into that travel of going from New York to Puerto Rico to having that conversation inside of her head and the audience experiencing it. But that's what it sounds like to me. And I'm really excited. Can you name all of the actors that are going to be part of this production?
Yes, so we have Rick Reed, who is playing the publisher and friend. And you have Francis, who is playing Julia. You have Marlene, who plays woman slash soul. You have Roberto Sanabria, who plays Juan. Anton plays Pablo, and Jillian plays Mother. And I know I'm forgetting somebody.
Jose Sanchez.
Anton plays Bosch.
He said
I hope
Jose
I got.
Sanchez. I heard Jose Sanchez.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yes. Jose will be playing
Jose Sanchez plays.
Bosch. Yeah. Go
And
ahead,
so,
guys.
is it safe to say that all of you learned about Julia de Burgos taking on this project?
Absolutely, absolutely. We've
I
learned
can't
so
speak for
much.
anybody else, but definitely me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
As soon as I decided to do it, all I was doing is research, reading, and looking at pictures, looking at anything that I could find on her on YouTube. But I had a sense that Julia's story, I compared to somewhat our families.
uh-huh.
My mom was an alcoholic herself, and she was what we call a working alcoholic. She knew how to turn it on and turn it off. And Julia, outside of her greatness as a poet, as an activist, as a feminist, it's even more complex because she was fighting all these issues during the time of Puerto Rico that are still existing. The time of holding, oppressing the people, and to think that this was an unsung hero is one of those things that fascinate me. That goes, oh my God,
Right, which is why
I need to know more.
I applaud what you're doing because you're passing on the story and you're doing it in this entertaining fashion. And so before we go, I want to know from both actors, like what you're taking with you, what you have learned in your development, in your character development, in participating in this story, and learning about this particular part of history that isn't taught in our schools, and how it's influenced you in your interest of learning more of your own history.
I think for me, I'm very interested in these hidden voices that we have. There's so much. We were just talking about the Maribel sisters the other day, and the Marisol sisters, and thinking of their story, and all these wonderful um, stories that we can tell. For this particular piece, I think Julia's, her pain, her her genius, her everything that she gave, and then everything that she had to go through is very inspirational for me, and I'll always take that with me. And I really hope to tell her story, and I really hope that we can capture every moment that Carmen has written and bring it to life. And another thing I discovered is that Enrique is a phenomenal singer. I have to say, one of amazing voice. I've never heard a voice like his, so that's one thing I discovered too during this production.
Oh my, so we've got a hidden treat in there. And Rick, before we go, I want to make sure we get your word in before we run out of time.
Yeah, I think for me, Julia's story is a universal story. It's a typical story, like Enrique said, of an unsung hero, and women who are unsung heroes and who have been unsung heroes throughout the history of mankind in recorded history. I think, we see in this particular story her struggle, as a woman who's ahead of her time, who's independent thinking, she's assertive, and of course that flew against, the paternal, patriarchal kind of mentality that existed at the time and still predominantly exists in the world today,
Right, to
and,
say the
her
least.
struggle,
Mm,
with the schism, in the terms of the character of her soul, where, we all want to be accepted, we all want to fit in, and yet, when you talk about artists and other types of individuals, sometimes that's an impossibility because, you're just so far ahead of the curve, that you can fit in, and certainly those, when you're flying against or standing against the tidal wave of opposition or unconformity, then you typically get crushed by it. So we see in her story where she was crushed by the times, by the system, culturally, socially, economically. Um, so her story is a universal story, and it's a very important story. Certainly in the Puerto Rican culture and the Latino culture, but also in the world culture.
Brava. Bravo, bravo. Thank you. Once again, Enrique Cruz de Jesus here discussing Julia de Burgos, Child of Water, written by Carmen Rivera. He's the director and the Alpha Omega Theatrical Dance Company's artistic director, along with actors Francis Lozada and Rick Reed. Once again, Julia de Burgos, Child of Water is taking place tonight through July 30th and Friday, August 4th. Through the 6th, Fridays and Saturdays at 7 p.m. and Sundays at 3 p.m. And that's happening at the Alpha Omega Theatrical Dance Company, which is located at 70 East 4th Street in Manhattan. For tickets and more, visit alphaomegadance.org. Stay tuned. There's more open when we return.